I've had this goal for years now, to create a complete Zelda-like game that is fully open source and available on GitHub. For context, one of the first series that I did on YouTube was Recreating Zelda. These videos focused on specific parts of the Zelda games, like Link's animations, the heart system, certain items, and so on. I would explain how to implement these features and code them up myself using Lua and Love2D, and each video had all of the code published to GitHub. But there was one major problem: the game assets. I used the real sprites from Link to the Past, and later on the original Legend of Zelda, and because of this I couldn't publish the sprites used in my game to GitHub. Legally, these assets belong to Nintendo, so I can't include them in an open source project. And this was a problem. People were able to view the code for the project, but they couldn't run the game themselves because all of the PNG files were missing. When it became clear to me how big of an issue this was, I kind of just gave up on the project altogether. That is, until recently. I was browsing opengameart.org looking for some sprites for a different project when I happened to come across this: Zelda-like tilesets and sprites. I am so impressed by this asset pack. It's honestly one of the best ones I've seen on this site. It was uploaded by RMM1998, it has the public domain license, and the sprites and tiles are extremely well made. There's a complete overworld tile set with tons of decorations, buildings, and landscapes. There's some character assets fully animated, some items, some UI, so much stuff to work with. Using these assets, I can create a full Zelda-like game, just like how I originally wanted to, except this time the game would be fully available on GitHub, code, sprites, and all, so people can use and learn from the code while also being able to run the game themselves. This has me really excited. So I started a brand new project from scratch, still using Lua and Love. I got my main character going first. The asset pack comes with a main character sprite sheet, but I did some modifications and turned it into this, our new main character. I got his movement working, as well as the animations. Then, using the tile set, I designed a small area for us to test things out in, and added a camera to the game so the player can explore the whole area. By the way, check the card for my tutorial on cameras and Love2D if you're interested. I followed the same steps in this project. From here, I added a very basic health system. There's a health property as well as a max health property, and reading those values, I have these hearts displayed at the top. If our max health property goes up, more hearts get shown. And if I start to take damage where the player's health property goes down, the hearts start to go away, which by the way supports half hearts as well. Next up, I wanted to implement the sword. Unfortunately, I wasn't a big fan of how the asset pack implemented a sword slash. I'm not into the sword being a part of the sprite itself, and also the length of the sword seems too short to me. So I wanted to get a bit creative and think about my options. The original Legend of Zelda has a very basic sword stab, and although this is simple to implement and looks nice, I think this style is a bit dated, and I could do better. A Link to the Past has a much nicer swing, but it would take a lot of extra artwork to achieve a look like this, and having the sword connected to the sprite itself makes the collision detection a bit more complicated. So I looked to non-Zelda games for inspiration on this. Specifically, I really like Hyper Light Drifter's sword swing, since it's instant and looks really cool. Also, a kind of a weird one, but Demon Tower from Night in the Woods has a really similar sword swing, which I think would work great here. So I gave it a shot. I made a very simple 2-frame swing animation for the player, 1 frame for the windup, and 1 for the release. And I did this for all 4 directions. Again, a lot of these are adapted from what came with the asset pack. I then added these animations to the game and tied them to an attack button. Now that the player is swinging his arms, I added the slash effect. This is just a simple white arc that I drew up myself. I have it appear in front of the player for a brief moment, and it's rotated for all 4 directions. Finally, I added the sword to this whole process. This is done with a separate draw of the sword sprite, where at any given frame, it rotates and draws at the precise location that it's supposed to. For example, I'm checking, are we facing up on frame 2? Then we'll rotate the sword sprite and draw it exactly here. And I just repeated that process for each frame and each direction. And in the end, the sword swing ended up looking pretty great. And that's about where I'm at. This is a solid foundation for a complete Zelda-like game, and I mentioned at the start of the video, the whole project is available on GitHub, where you can view all of the code, sprite sheets, and even download the project and run for yourself. The link to this is in the description. In the next video, I'll be implementing the very first item for our player. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.